Welcome to Digital Nation, our weekly prime cuts of the best broadcasting from local TV stations across the UK. On the programme this week, let us transport you back in time to find out about an old-fashioned way of getting around. Spiky but oh so sweet, the plight of baby hedgehogs. Plus, we've been inspired to find out what it takes to become a martial arts maestro. And do get in touch with us on Twitter using the hashtag DigitalNation. First up, let's float over to Birmingham, where volunteers have been hard at work cleaning up the River Stour. From tyres to trolleys and mattresses to metal, you wouldn't believe quite what they've hauled out of the waterway.
The River Stour passes through Halesowen, Cradley, Lye and Stourbridge, but unfortunately has seen better days. Transition Stourbridge decided to take matters into their own hands and went about restoring an important historical landmark to its original glory.
I was with some friends doing a litter pick, came by this little, what I thought was a small stream. I had no idea it was the River Stour, which was very shameful because I'd lived in Stourbridge for about 30 years at that time. And the river actually is known as the Lost River because people don't know it's there. But during the litter pick, we saw this pile of plastic rubbish on a silt bank in the middle of the river. And I wondered how this was allowed to be and was no one responsible for it. And then we found out that actually nobody did seem to be responsible for it. So we started cleaning it ourselves.
Well, I think the River Stour and most rivers, especially industrial areas, have been used as dumping grounds. I mean, it's not just children that throw them in, it's everybody. Where around this area there's been a lot of factories knocked down, and I think it's an easy place for a bulldozer just to push a load of rubbish in.
We find mostly old shopping trolleys and particularly tyres because people find it easier to dump them in the river rather than take them where they should go because they actually have to pay to do that. But apart from that, there's almost anything you can think of. There are traffic cones, even mattresses, which are very, very difficult to get out because they're so full of water and silt. But you name it, we've probably found it, I should think. We definitely have a really strong community feeling within this group. In fact, somebody called it family, which I thought was rather nice. And it certainly gives you an opportunity to meet all sorts of people who come together because they want to look after the river. Very, very sociable and very community orientated. It's wonderful.
To Nottingham now, where long-term residents of the Children's Ward have been receiving special visits from some fluffy friends. It's well known that interacting with an animal can have positive effects on our mental health, and the rabbits, guinea pigs and other cute critters that were brought along put smiles back on these patients' faces.
For many of these little ones, this trip to the hospital terrace is a rare break outside of the Children's Ward.
Harry got diagnosed on the 4th of May with a large brain tumour, an inoperable one. They can't remove the tumour, so they've put him on doses of chemotherapy. He has been in hospital for 3 months now, so it is a long time. And because he's had quite a lot of brain surgery, he's desensitised to things. So having things like animals and days out and things is like almost bringing him back to how he used to be, because he's kind of like lost himself a little bit. Simple things like he hasn't smiled for a long time, and he started smiling last week, so it's really nice.
And it can be just as rewarding for parents.
It's heartbreaking because you want to be giving Isaac that fulfilled potential that he's got. Bringing him outside, just the fresh air is just, and he looks up and he's smiling, and that reaction is just worth its weight in gold. We've been stuck on the wall for obvious reasons, but you're just seeing him with all the nodes wide and everything attached to him, that it's not where it should be, is it? And I think it sort of gives you an opportunity to see a bit light at the end of the tunnel in terms of not just escaping the ward, but actually with a view to sort of discharge home as well.
Hospital staff say these special visits give kids a sense of normality.
It's great to see them excited and coming out of their shells, and even that just small stroke of an animal is sometimes a big thing for our children, and even those small things are massive things for the family and our patients.
These children and their families might be going through some difficult times right now, but snuggles from the Stonebridge City Farm animals have really brightened up their day.
It takes your mind off it. It makes you feel loved and happy. And like the bunny sitting here letting me stroke it, it just makes me feel happy. And little fluffy balls of happiness.
Let's meet a minister from Manchester who's been on a mission to melt away the pounds. Reverend Danny Crosby has been so successful swapping sandwiches for salads that he's lost 8 stone in 8 months and been named a Slimming Group's Man of the Year.
Danny began his weight loss journey after attending his nephew's wedding last summer. Noticing he felt self-conscious about his size, his sister recommended him to his local Slimming World group. 8 months later and 8 stone lighter, he is Slimming World's Man of the Year 2016.
A year ago when I started this adventure, it wasn't what I was doing. I was trying to get healthy, really. I was in a bit of a state. People are constantly talking to me about how it's inspiring them to try and get healthier themselves, really.
He began putting weight on during his mid-20s, but after going through childhood feeling too skinny and too small, he found becoming larger in weight gave him an unusual sense of confidence.
As a young man, I was not big at all, actually. In fact, my stepfather used to call me the stumpik, the runt of the family. I was the little one, really. But in my 20s, in my 30s, and certainly the last 6 years since I've started being a minister, the weight really piled on.
Once Danny plucked up the courage to begin his healthy eating regime, he cleaned his kitchen of all the foods he had, replacing them with his new diet. And it didn't take long for him to notice the difference. He had lost 9.5 pounds by the end of the first week.
Blew me away. It worked immediately. Now, it kind of shows how badly I was eating before. And that was purely through diet, not through any exercise, that just purely eating well and not starving myself at all.
As well as losing 8 stone, he shed 12 inches from both his chest and waist measurements. However, Danny says the most notable change for him is in his confidence and emotional well-being.
When I was out walking, I've never felt more alive or connected. My work was improving, it was affecting my work in a really positive way. I actually feel like I'm breathing. I've never felt more free.
Following his success, he wants to continue with his healthy eating plan, but hopes to encourage and inspire more people, particularly men, to follow in his footsteps.
Time to transport ourselves over to Oxfordshire, where after 5 years of detective work and hard graft, an historic tram has gone on display. The horse-drawn streetcar first carried passengers around the city in the 1880s. Now, after some extensive restoration, it's taking pride of place in the Oxford Bus Museum.
Oxford Bus Museum has been recreating transport history, but part of the story has always been missing, until now. 5 years ago, volunteers tried to locate an original horse-drawn tram, and it is finally on display.
The tram represents an 1881 Oxford tram. The shell was found in Gloucester, and we got it from the Gloucester Museum and brought it here, and 5 years' work, this is what you see. Trams ran in Oxford from 1881 until 1914. They were all horse-drawn. They never went electric because the council did not want electric lines going down the high street. There's no front or back because at the end of the route, you take the pin out and take the horse round to the other end and go backwards. And inside the seats are longitude and seats 20 people. To stop the tram, you just ring the bell and the horse will actually hear that and react as well. Horses push on this in order to pull the tram along, and this is connected to the tram. So by pushing on this, that does not put any weight on their spine.
From 1881 to 1913, the tram was the main mode of transport.
When they went in for double-decker trams, instead of having seating long ways, which we saw in the tram that was being preserved, they actually made it, as buses are now, facing the front. But of course that gave them a problem, because when you took the horse round to the other way, it was going backwards. So they came up with a seat that you could just move the back, and then it was going forwards again. And they also had these flaps, which were, the idea was if it rained upstairs, you put the flap over and the seat stays dry.
By 1914, sadly, the horse-drawn trams were out of favour.
So this is a picture in 1915 when the trams were still going, but they were facing competition from the new Daimler buses.
Now the story of Oxford buses has a proper beginning.
What's big and green and has football-sized holes all over? Why, a foot golf course, of course. This novelty sport sees the beautiful game played along the fairway. Let's head to Swansea to find out if this hybrid new ball game is a match made in heaven or just a bit left of field.
Now, anyone that knows me will tell you that I am awesome at golf. I just am. I'm also awesome at football. It's true. And this is called foot golf. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, it's a sport that's been around for quite a few years now. It was invented by, or rather designed by, some Dutch footballers some years ago, but it's escalated now into quite a sort of a serious sport. It's actually been adopted by Sport England now. There's about 200 courses in the UK. There's about 8 in Wales, but the sort of largest concentration of the foot golf courses would be around the southeast of England, as you'd expect. Realistically, I think it's more akin with football. It's just played on a golf course. There's no equipment needed other than a ball. Anybody can play it. It really is a sport for everybody. It's any age group plays this. So as I said, you don't need any equipment. It's just a football really, and it's a very easy game to play.
To the purist, foot golf might not be the sort of sport that they might like, but I tell you what, it is great fun and makes brilliant use of the old Ashley Road field. Well done to whatever that invented this crazy sport.
Well, that brings us to the end of part 1, which means it's quiz time. In which city did British physicist Joseph Swan first demonstrate the incandescent light bulb in 1878? Was it A, Durham, B, Newcastle, or was it C, London? Haven't had that light bulb moment yet? Don't worry, we'll give you the answer after the break. Welcome back to Digital Nation. Before the break, we asked you where British physicist Joseph Swan first demonstrated the incandescent light bulb back in 1878. And the answer was B, Newcastle. Swan later developed and patented the design and began putting light bulbs in landmarks across the UK. Now, slimy, slippery seaweed washing up on the shoreline can be a bit of an eyesore. But in the Solent area, the algae has taken on an altogether more artistic appearance. Sculptures of sunbathers made out of seaweed have been popping up along the banks of the town of Emsworth. But who's been making them?
The high amount of seaweed that's been washing up on Emsworth's shoreline has been a cause for complaint for many locals and beachgoers. But artist Karen McDougall has found a way of turning the slimy green material into unusual creations.
So I've heard a lot of people complaining about the volume of seaweed this year, and I just started to look at it and examine it and think I could do something with this. I just started to experiment. I actually wanted to do a vertical figure, but obviously with seaweed and the consistency it's not possible to stack the seaweed up. So in the middle of the night I just suddenly thought I could do it horizontal. I have to fit in with the tides obviously, so I come here early in the morning with my dog, or I come later tea time. It just depends on the tide times as well, but it takes several hours to make one. So I may come in the morning and start it, have to come back again at the end of the day. I know it sounds bizarre, but sometimes I have to water them to keep them moist so I can actually complete it.
For several weeks, people tried in vain to find out who was behind the distinctive artwork, even posting on social media in an attempt to uncover Karen's identity.
I just think people came along, saw the sculptures, didn't see me making them, and just thought, well, who's made them? Where have they come from? Then things started to appear on Twitter, people asking, does anybody know who's done them? And then a friend of mine took photographs and then sent it off to the local newspaper. I think people have looked at it in a positive way, whereas the seaweed, as they've been complaining about it, it's dirty and it's in the way and we don't want it. And then it becomes something. I think people are familiar with seeing it in sand, but not familiar with seeing it in seaweed.
The high tide has now washed away part of the sunbathing sculptures, but Karen says she'll keep creating new ones.
Let's land in Lincolnshire now, where a group of young girls have been introduced to gliding. The teenagers learnt the physics and physical challenges of getting these engineless planes up in the air. And they even got a go themselves in a bid to turn them into high flyers. both in the skies and beyond.
Lincolnshire Gliding Club joined forces with John Whitgift Academy in an effort to introduce more young girls to gliding.
This is an opportunity to get more girls and more women into gliding, which I find is the most exhilarating sport that there is. Just being up in the sky, just you, just the air and the birds, and being able to look down at the ground. It's something that I want to share with people, not just the experience of the flight, but all of the work we do together on the ground to get the gliders in the sky. People can start flying at the age of 12 and they can actually go solo at the age of 14, which is an amazing experience to potentially have 3 years of gliding before you're even allowed to drive a car.
The girls had the opportunity to get up close to the gliders, understand how they work, and experience firsthand what it feels like to take to the skies on their very first flight as co-pilot.
I really enjoyed it. And when you're up in the air, you get to see everything below you. And I don't think you really realise how high you actually are.
Got 10 year 10s, they're all doing triple science, all know where they want to go in life, really good attendance, and they deserve something like this. Any women that we can get into male dominated industries, it's not just for boys, then that'd be absolutely great. Any industry where these girls can become women that are high flyers, that they can earn their own money and they can do well in life.
A host of hoglets are being cared for at a hedgehog hospital in Cambridgeshire. The team have seen a rise in admissions after an unusually large number have been rescued by the public. They're doing their best to look after the prickly poppets, even taking them home to keep up with regular feeding routines.
Sweet, spiky and cute, but in need of urgent medical attention.
It's certainly baby season here at the Hedgehog Hospital. We've got over 50 on off-site care at the moment. They can't remain in the hospital because they're on very strict feeding regimes, so I've lots of very busy members of volunteers at home caring for them.
Cambridgeshire is lucky enough to have one of the few hedgehog hospitals in the UK, with a dedicated team that's been working for 25 years to help them. Their hedgehog numbers were predicted to be around 30 million during the 1950s, and currently stand at around 1.5 million. Hedgehogs are declining at a similar rate to tigers at 5% a year, and even though they are famously elusive creatures, Cambridge residents are encouraged to help.
Perfect hedgehog environment is a garden that's got long grass or hedge, somewhere for it to sort of hide under, somewhere where there's access to other gardens. So that's one of the issues at the moment, that people are putting in new fences and walls, and then a hedgehog can't get access elsewhere. They sort of roam, I think it is about a mile or so a night, so they need access to lots of space. If you've got hedgehogs coming into your garden, then putting out water for them at night and putting out sort of dry cat or dog biscuits. And if you do have a hedgehog visiting, then you're really lucky and you want to sort of look after it.
To Blackpool, where we head down the gym to meet a jiu-jitsu genius. Sebastian Shishka has been practicing the martial art for 6 years and he's now a world champion. That's Lancashire found out more about the sport, his impressive training regime, and got to browse through some of his bling.
Sebastian is a multi-award-winning jiu-jitsu champion.
Jiu-jitsu is a combat sport based on grappling and ground fighting. The concept of jiu-jitsu is actually for the weaker and smaller opponent to defeat a bigger guy, Problem starts when the big and strong guy knows jiu-jitsu,
Currently living in Blackpool, Sebastian heads to America next month for his next competitions, and his training is currently underway.
I train 3 times a day, at the moment. I'm also cutting weight down. I have to drop some, it's only 2 kilograms, but it's hard, when you're in a good shape, when there's no fat on your body, it's really hard to lose, 2 kilograms. I teach in here, which is also part of my training, really. When I teach, I show them technique. It's good for me to review the technique, the details of the technique. So when I'm teaching, I'm reviewing myself, after the class, when we do live training, when we're sparring, I try to spar with my students,
Dedication, discipline and hard work is what's needed to become a champion, and Sebastian is determined to prove that he's got what it takes.
So just to be clear, he just lifted 220 kilos, that's 34.5 stone.
And his strength isn't the only impressive thing that Sebastian has to offer. His previous accolades speak for themselves. So can you talk me through what we've got here?
Yeah, I brought the most important ones. I've got a lot more at home, but these are the most important ones for me. This one, which was the absolute division, I was fighting smaller guys, bigger guys, and I managed to get silver medal. Second one is this one. When I was promoted to brown belt, that was my first competition. Went straight to the World Championship in California, and I managed to win gold. I always wanted to be the best at everything, even in the gym, I always want to win, it's my character. I'm a nice guy, don't get me wrong, but I just like to win, I enjoy competing and enjoy winning.
Still to come, more sporty, water-based fun. But first, let's make a splash on Creative Kingdom.
We all assumed that it was the Californians who invented windsurfing, but someone from Hailing Island in the Solent has as much of a shout as anyone. His name was Peter Chilvers, and in 1958 he took a homemade surfboard, a mast, and a sail, fastened them together with a universal joint, and made a sailboat a full 10 years before anybody in America started selling something similar. Oh yes, and did we say he was only 12 years old at the time? Ah. Proof once again that when it comes to creativity, innovation, and taking the wind out of California's sails, in Hailing Island Mint.
And finally, staying with water sports, let's paddle over to Leeds now, where a lucky presenter has been out on a lake trying kayaking. And as you'll see, even the pros don't get to keep their heads above water in this wet and wild activity.
We're here at White Rose Canoe Club and I am so excited, mainly just to be wearing this. There's kayaking, there's canoeing, there's paddleboards. Some people are playing water polo out there on the lake and I'm gonna give it a go.
So if you look on the water now, we've got a whole mixture of range of people, different ages. So we do a whole range of things from kayaks, which are the small things that you sit inside, to canoes, which are the big things that sit inside. We have paddleboard, and lots of the people you actually see around you are people who have turned up and had a go. It's as simple as that.
Oh, this is not just going to shoot forward, is it?
No, you wait, we'll hold it on.
Okay, so I'm just going to get you to lean back as I push you in.
Right, yeah. Lean forward onto the wall.
There you go. Yeah! Oh, shoot! Oh! Bit too confident.
Never let go your paddle.
You might think, gosh, Kerry, that looks really easy. It's not. It's not. I'm clasping onto Dean here. Now, you just did an awesome, nose dive? What would you call that?
Oh, just a roll.
Just a roll. I'm there struggling to even get by and he's flipping all over the place. Woo! Come on! We're gonna let that one in for me, but I'll take it.
And that's all we have time for on this week's look at the highlights of local TV. If you've enjoyed watching, don't forget you can catch up on previous episodes of the show at bbc.co.uk/digitalnation. Or why not check out your local TV station's website. But that's all for now. Bye-bye.